It's time we jump into some Maxter versus Effortless here for our latest installment of the Quake Pro League. My name's Ketchup, joined by Flea, and I'm always curious to kind of see how Maxter is shaping up. Effortless has been in the Pro League for so long now. We always know that he's kind of forever motivated, and you always hope that he does well. And at the same time, Max is a player that's been on quite a recent climb. I mean, look at the two players in the Americas that have been kind of ascending. Zeniku's the absolute prime example, but Maxter, his last finals performance was out of this world as well. We can never forget.
Absolutely. I mean, last finals he took down Cooler, he took down Kilson, he beat Base even, ultimately ended up losing to Rafa and Naswa, but other than that, the man is a shooting star, only rivaled by Zeniku, really. And so far in this stage, we've seen that Maxter first lost his opening games versus Rafa and also Naswa once more, but ever since he's been flying high. He's taken down both Sip and Saigib in a convincing 3-0 fashion, and today he's up against Effortless, who so far hasn't secured a win yet. He's been able to take a map away from Sip, but other than that, this hasn't been his stage, and I think that's a bit of a shame, because last stage, Effortless actually managed to get 7th place, so well clear from that relegation danger zone, and had a pretty decent performance, so hopefully he can kick it back up as we move into the final weeks of this stage.
I would love to see this be a competitive series. I'd love to see it come down to a 2-1. I'm just looking at Maxter and his kind of recent shape and how he's playing really well. And it's hard not to, I think, just have him as the favorite here. The scoreline is a slightly harder one to predict, because if Effortless is playing his absolute A game, he looks absolutely fantastic. But more information will probably come from those picks and bans, won't they? So when we get a chance to see what the maps and the journey will be, this is going to be just an extra layer to that. Deep Embrace we get to see. Love that map. Doomslayer removed, because, I mean, he's kind of good on that map, and that's keeping it nice and generous. Molten Falls afterwards, where the Scale Bearer is taken away, but the Sorlag still comes out from Maxter versus the Galena of Effortless, and then Veil of Nath comes back. This time, Death Knight getting picked on that map, and actually Ison picked on Veil as well. So a repeat of Ruins, but different map.
Indeed. Pretty standard matchup. Nothing really that stands out. Again, like you pointed out yourself, Doomslayer being banned on Deep Embrace, no surprises there. Effortless taking away Scale Bearer on Molten. Again, we know that Maxter loves the Scale and that Molten is one of the absolute best maps to play him on. And then finally, we get to see Keel banned, so another big body heavy champion removed for Veil. So overall, pretty standard. Most of these champions we have already seen. I think we've basically seen all of them in the exact same order as well, just different maps, right? We started Strogg Ranger on Corrupted Keep, then we saw Strogg Galena on Nav, and now we're seeing Ison versus the Death Knight, not on Ruins this time, but on Veil. So basically the exact same champions, only now on different maps.
Hey, I mean, it gives a fair few of you potential newcomers to see how differently the champions can apply on these maps, I suppose. But Deep Embrace, one of the newer additions. I love watching it at this level, because it is very much similar to an Awoken. It's another one of those combat-heavy maps, but it's just the importance of champion movement. It's just as important as it is an Awoken, but in a slightly different way, I would say. It comes down to more specific kind of I think trick jumps more than anything else. Awoken's more about just being able to navigate those jumps, like regular jumps, right? The importance of a double jump. But there's one jump in Deep Embrace that a lot of people think of, and it is that jump from bridge to heavy. If you're able to quickly just not even think about execution, and you can just be on bridge and grab heavy, it shuts down an opponent's means to just stop you from taking it so much. Doomslayer is the most prominent example, because he can just press his jump key twice and he's up there. But then you look at the Ranger, where a rocket jump perhaps, because there's not as much self-damage, Orb in a pinch, but Strogg, that crouch slide just lets you go zip straight up there and take it. Just a little bit more execution heavy. Not that I would say execution matters at this level of Pro League, because everyone can use every champion.
It is a difficult and tricky jump, though, and we have seen it gone wrong more than once, right?
If you mess up, you just bump into it and you're dead, you're stuck.
We've seen players lose frags, major items, completely drop control just because they messed up that one tricky jump. So having a champion that can help you with that, the way Maxter does now, could prove very useful. And with that being said, we're about to load into the first map of this series. We've got Maxter versus Effortless. Catch-up, I think that most people would rule this in Maxter's favor. You already said that you were favoring him yourself, and I'm going to agree with that. But Effortless, you know, he has his moments of brilliance. We saw him shine brightly in the previous stage, so let's see if we can make that happen once more. Actually, previous stage, Effortless beat Maxter 2-1. So last time they played against each other, it was the American who took down the player from Argentina.
Well, looks like our warm-up is coming to a close, which means that Deep Embrace is just about to begin. It has quickly become really one of my favorite maps to watch. I love playing it, I love watching it. It kind of fits everything I like about Quake, I guess. But as we jump into the end of this warm-up, Maxter and Effortless head-to-head. It's going to be Effortless getting the rail side spawn, which does mean that he gets Mega as well.
Maxter controlling the center area of the map. Oh, I think he caught a glimpse of Effortless at the very least. Knows exactly where his opponent is. And this is a really clever play by Maxter. He knows that he's got the high ground in his favor, so there's essentially nothing that Effortless can do with just rockets, and he also doesn't want to switch to rail, being that close to his opponent. So Maxter just absolutely abused that positional advantage with the weapons that he had to get himself a nice first
Definitely where the game sense comes into play. You know that they just don't have anything to work with, and it's, I'm going to make this fight as awkward for you as I can. Speaking of which, Effortless stuck in a near identical situation. The only thing he had there to change of plans from what happened last time was machine gun. Didn't work out at all. But that gives Maxter a 2-0 lead for now. The important things comes down to the rest of the items. I like that use of Pika just to give himself extra threat to stop Effortless from just pushing in on that missed rail. Oh, and the drop down, easily punished. Maxter playing this nice and quick so far, and I think that it's going to be really hard for Effortless to challenge himself here. There's no way he can take this Mega, and actually, can he even get the heavy? No, he doesn't get it! He gets knocked off course by Maxter! He tried to steal it away! Flee, that's disaster.
I mean, just the damage so far is so heavily favoring Maxter. Maxter is nearly on 1.2 thousand damage, and Effortless is at 200. This is a very one-sided game so far. Effortless just isn't given any room to play. He can't get a hold of any of the weapons that he needs, is what it feels like. And Maxter is just running circles around him.
Now, as of late, we don't see Deep Embrace make it into the pick as often as we kind of used to when it was new, and I think players are kind of trying to figure out their style. Maybe it could be a bit of a secret weapon. It is absolutely one of the more snowball-heavy maps, and you can see it from Max's point of view, just how many spawn traps he's getting here. He's getting a good scout out over it. Effortless is spawning with absolutely nothing, looking for even more potential spawn damage, but from where Maxter was standing, could cover both angles. Oh no, the Pika say goodnight. Air assault.
Good night indeed, Maxter. So dominant so far. Effortless has only been able to secure 2 major items, one of them being the one that he spawned on at the very beginning. Whereas Maxter has got 7 so far. Now that last fight, that was a bit of a fumble of Maxter. He came out with the LG drawn, but then only had 1 cell of ammo, essentially, so we have to switch to rockets, which really are not the weapon you want to have out when you're below your opponent like that. And that's actually given Effortless some breathing room to work with.
Ooh, and he went for the angle. Couldn't resist. That was risky business. Looks like Maxter should be able to pick things up the way things are going. He steals away the heavy. Now, Effortless has done a pretty good job during that one life of potentially offsetting things. But again, that snowball heavy nature. He gets railed immediately. Oh, that's a direct. That feels bad. Another spawn trap. Effortless is just totally unable to change things. I mean, I wonder if is he gonna maybe start trying to delay his spawn to see if that can maybe mess with it, or is Maxter even having any reason to do it? He's just staying put. I don't even know if delaying is going to make a difference.
Effortless just embraced his fate right there. He just started spinning around, crouching up and down behind the pillar. He knew it was over there. Yeah, Maxter is just so dominant with the control and reading these spawns so expertly that Effortless It feels like most of the times he respawns, he just eats a rail of the spawn and is already on the back foot before he's even gotten to take that first step.
I'm going to take a look at the difference in damage again. 2.7k for maxter, and Effortless only just been able to get over 1,000. A rather significant difference here.
Oh.
Has to hit this rail, and he will. Okay. Bit of fumbled movement there from maxter. You can see the frustrated head shake. I mean, it does happen sometimes with crouch sliders where if you just don't get it right, you kind of have no movement momentum at all, and you're kind of stuck in no man's land. Exactly what happened there.
Effortless. He's got his work cut out for him. I think that's the least that we can say. 11 frags in 5 minutes. I mean, it's clearly doable because maxter just did it to him, but it's one hell of a task. He needs to cement just completely dominant control for the remainder of this map and start chaining together those kills one after another.
The only difference,
least he's getting some major items now.
Yeah, I was going to say the only difference is that, you know, for example, we see a frag land. He's not going to be able to get anything off spawn now because he hasn't got a rail. But Effortless gets a frag. He has no armor. He has no position, really. Just from where he's standing at the time of getting it, he can't really set up for a spawn rail in any way. Whereas almost every single time maxter gets it, I mean, if he had a rail at the time of getting that frag last, he would have been able to get a rail off the spawn. He had the angle set up. Nice rocket jump as well coming out from maxter. And unfortunately for Effortless, has been able to fully retake complete control. Rail again. Oh, the kamikaze as well. Hurts a lot.
Yeah. Oh, and then just caught mid-jump. LG to the face completely kills your momentum, freezes you in place. And at this point, Effortless still fighting valiantly.
Yo, that LG from Effortless.
That was on point. Absolutely stuck like glue to his opponent. But maxter off the spawn with that nice opening rail gets another one and even has the heavy to work with, so that means that Effortless is out stacked and will drop yet another frag.
Oh, these rails are looking crispy from maxter so far. We even saw it from the in-game chat there from Effortless. Sweet!
Yeah, 60% railgun accuracy for maxter, and he's been using that weapon a hell of a lot. Most of his damage has come from railgun alone.
Control maintained by maxter, and 16-3, a rather savage difference in frags here. Even more of the damage. You can see maxter actually just holding it down, and no escape for you. Effortless tries to rocket jump to safety. And there's no safety to be had. Man, Strog is such a powerful pick on this map. Not just because of the mobility and the Pika, but I think it's just the health files too. There's already lots of little ways that you can get your stack back up without needing a mega, but the fact that he gets a frag and can just pick up and overstack himself.
Indeed, maxter
giving us all a headache just then.
Yeah, I saw that too. Maxter essentially gets a free health bubble for every single frag he secures, so on a map this small, that can mean the difference between getting refragged or just holding on to your control. And now the major items are perfectly tight, and that typically helps the player who's trying to make a comeback happen, but at this point I think it's just over and done. 2.5 minutes, 15 frags. This is very one-sided and heavily favors the player from Argentina.
Man, nothing has gone right for Effortless so much that even with that exchange, maxter lands on his head and just naturally shuts down the point, like the chance of a point-blank rocket. Any other situation, Effortless probably would have been able to pick that frag up, and it just so happens that right then he couldn't. That is so tragic. Hard not to feel bad for Effortless on this first map, because just nothing worked, and there really is no ignoring just how much spawn damage maxter was able to establish here. I mean, an absolute masterclass of how to oppress on Deep Embrace.
This was just the damage. That's really what made this game for maxter, right? We were, what, 1 minute in, and I called out that maxter already had 1.2k damage versus Effortless barely having 200. When that happens that early on, I mean, 1,000 damage of an advantage to your opponent 1 minute into the map, that's incredibly difficult to come back from. And Effortless has managed to somewhat stabilize that, but it's still been maxter who just slapped him around at the opening of the game, and then, like you said yourself, those damage, those rails of the spawn just proved to be too much and really shut down any opportunity that Effortless might have had to mount a comeback.
But because of how one-sided this map historically tends to go, especially recently, not really every player's cup of tea. You know, some players very much will relish that kind of map, and I think it just depends on what your style is. If you're confident that you can lock in that control early, then it can be a very dangerous map pick for you. But if you're the kind of player that maybe it's not your most comfortable pick, you're probably not going to want to play it in a competitive setting, because if they're more practiced than you, it's going to be hard to get that win, let alone in the fashion here. 20-4. I mean, this was a fantastic start for maxter.
Everything is now going to come down to how well Effortless can just reset going into map 2, right? Effortless is a kind of player who will sometimes, you know, he stops, he types in chat, shows that he's a bit distracted. He did it this map as well. Now at that point, of course, I think he had already resigned to the inevitable outcome, but I hope for his sake that he can reset, that he can regain his focus, that he can recollect his thoughts and realize that, you know what, you're playing Deep Embrace against a Strog who is massively outdamaging you and who is hitting all the shots that matter. That might not be the case on map 2. So hopefully for Effortless, he can approach that with a clean mind.
Yeah, I think that Effortless has come a long way as a player here. When we kind of talk about his recent, I guess, journey as a player, there's been a lot more kind of knuckle down and focus. A little bit less of the kind of typing in chat. Well, the whole exchange of typing in chat and almost like showing an opponent that you're a bit frustrated. That was a long time ago now. And at least when he kind of types in chat these days, it's when there's really no chance of a comeback, right? So right now we kind of just keep a nice, maybe a cool mind or whatever it is. But at least when it happens when the map is like, right, it's over. Rather than distracting yourself when there's still work to be done. And there has been a lot more focus from Effortless. You kind of see it in the way that he kind of discusses the game and keeps his practice nice and high. He actively just loves to compete, right? He loves to compete, he loves to play the Quake. But these kind of matches will really test the patience, because you look at that first map, maxter just did not allow you to exist. Effortless, surely at least half of his spawns in that map resulted in a rail the moment he appeared. And it's not guaranteed, but it just maxter had the right read on it. And even if there isn't a rail because he doesn't spawn there, he flicks to the other spawn location because, hey, if you're not there, you're definitely going to be here. And the pressure just continues. That was definitely less Effortless and all maxter.
Now map 2, completely different beast. This is going to be Molten Falls. Maxter is running the Sorlag versus Effortless playing the Galena. Once more, a matchup we've already seen on a different map today. Maxter has, again, an advantage when it comes to speed and mobility, but Effortless, you know, Molten Falls, pretty big map, plenty of places to hide those totems. We've seen how effective it can be, right? CNZ won that matchup through excellent totem management against Garpy earlier. So maybe, or hopefully at least, Effortless is paying close attention to that game, maybe learned a thing or two moving into this series.
But as we quite rightly saw earlier today, if the Galena is able to keep herself super healthy with the totems, then it can result in a totally different matchup than you might expect. Molten Falls, it can bring out two different kinds of player. You can be hyper aggressive, especially if you have the stack advantage, you have the control, you're cycling around the map. Movement heavy champions love Molten Falls because of just the wide open corners that you can use to really build up max speed. It's one of the more popular maps that we do tend to see crouch sliders. You know, the Slash, on a rare occasion we see Slash picked in Pro League, it does tend to be on Molten Falls, and Strog, it's one of his playgrounds, if you will. But it also lends itself, I think, just as heavily to those kind of bunny hop focused champions, right? The Sorlags, Anarchy as well is one of his more prominent competitive picks. But that's for the aggressive player. That's for the player that kind of likes to dominate and bully their way around a map. On the flip side of that, if you play a super positional heavy game, you have those good rails on deck. Galena, this is one of her more common maps too, because as you said, you've got so much room to place things down that if you are being careful and your opponent is kind of flying around all over the place, at least they're making noise. And that noise gives you the information that you need to play the strong positions. But it's all theory fighter right now. How it goes, we can have our answer in the first couple of minutes. And it also depends on the spawn too. You know, you get railside spawn as Galena, good, but if not so much, you're gonna have to try and maybe lay those traps, but you need to have the right weapon for those traps, and what's their stack like. There's so many variables coming into play.
Indeed. Now I am somewhat worried about these champion picks for Effortless because we just saw what Maxter can do when he's running a champion that has a mobility advantage over his opponents, right? Strock with the crouch slide was instrumental to how dominant that victory was on map 1, Deep Embrace. So now that he's again got a champion with air control, Sorlak can very easily and quickly maneuver around the map. This is again going to be difficult for Effortless because he once more has to go up against a champion that can outmaneuver him on every single part of the map.
Well, it's funny you should talk about mobility too, because you always see people talking about Molten. One of the reasons it favors the mobility champions is not just because they have room to be fast. It's that they can be going so fast that if you are trying to lay a trap for someone, you know they're going to be going really fast, right? But at the same time, they could just zip round a corner half a second sooner than you're expecting, and the chance to land that opening damage is already gone. They're already out of there. We have seen it a long time ago with Slash, where she just goes zip round a corner, and you can't even hit her. You're the one that's supposed to be surprising her, but she's already gone. You blinked and missed it. And those air control champions can be just as prominent. You know, they land and they're in the air. Right as they come around the corner, they're in the air, so you can't hear it, and then bam, you've just been taken by surprise by the champion that you're trying to surprise. And then you get acid in your face, point blank rockets, and you're dead. Move on for the next frag. So looks like Max just rejoined the lobby. I think he had a little bit of tech issues. I think he's now back in with a 1-0 advantage at this point. Molten Falls, one of them all out in the open, so similar to a Ruins in that respect. But with the champion picks and the players, especially off that first map, like, what's the game plan going to be, Flea?
That remains to be seen, right? How is he going to approach this? Is he to hide those totems, maybe at that bounce pad over at LG, very common position, and then just get that overstack going? Or does he want to have one at ready for every engagement where he might find himself in a bad spot? Knowing Effortless, it's very difficult to decide because he is not the kind of player who really sticks to one playstyle, right? He's not like CNZ where you can say, no, this is a player who is very disciplined, very passive. He's definitely going to hide those totems. Effortless is more likely to do a bit of a mix of both, but no longer do we have to speculate as we have finished with the warm-up and are loading into this map. So far, Maxter 1-0 up. Let's see if he can close it out or if Effortless can make a stand on map 2.
Not a terrible start for him. Rocket launcher in hand and Mega Side as well means that he can get the totem game nice and sneaky on that jump pad, which might help him out a little bit later down the line if Maxter doesn't immediately scout it out. But it actually looks like Maxter less interested in kind of just rotating or kind of, I guess, fortifying a part of the map, which we can sometimes see. He's already circled all the way around, and I think they might have a bit of a trade-off between these two items. It depends.
Very slow start. Effortless is just being really careful not to put himself in a bad situation where all of a sudden Maxter zooms around the corner and gets straight into his face. So he wants to keep those angles at the ready so he can use the railgun as that first line of defense. And I don't think either player really knows where the other is. Oh, there we go. Effortless very late to respond to that, it feels like. Has to drop down.
And Maxter had the perfect decision. He could hear the jumping up top, and obviously you can go left or right, but I think that just the right end must be the safer approach. A little bit more of an obvious approach, perhaps, with heavy spawning. I really do think Maxter's pushing in, and this is giving Effortless not so good of a situation, and he peeks as well. The rail takes him by surprise. A little bit of visible frustration, but this will be a spawn frag. Maxter will clear that one up very easily. I'm a little bit worried about Effortless in this series, Flea.
You and me both. Not looking on point, the rocket damage isn't quite there either. But Mega is up behind him, and it is Maxter who's forced to retreat. Effortless, is he going to make a rush, a blind push onto the heavy? Does show up, but unfortunately isn't able to get there on time, playing as Galena, of course, not a champion who's very gifted in the movement department. But now there is a bit of a delay, around 7 seconds between the items. This is a bit scary for Effortless, because if Maxter now gets a hold of Mega and gets control, Maxter can definitely get there on time.
And that string of damage was so hard for Effortless there. All he had was an LG without the railgun, even if you know they're out in the open. your damage only becomes so high. And if you don't have damage, you can't put a dent in the stack they're building up over you. And speaking of stack, maxter using his potentially to push round and maybe set a trap. And I think that will be successful. Effortless tries so hard to finally take a rail, and maxter says, no, you do not have a rail pass here, friend. It belongs to me.
So far, the totems haven't really been the greatest help to Effortless either. Hasn't gotten 3 of them up at once yet, and it feels like he's just dropping them to get a tiny bit of health back at times.
Yeah, he's barely had 1, right?
Yeah,
Maxter has been a non-issue.
Maxter has basically taken care of them as soon as they've been put on the map, and before he really got any sort of consistent healing out of any of them. These are good rails though. This is exactly what Effortless needs to do. Play the rail game. Sorlag, she's fast, but she's also a pretty big target. And the railgun might be exactly what he needs to just slow down that assault, maybe do enough damage to make a stand and take away one of the major items. If he had landed that rail, I think he could have pushed in for heavy. But unfortunately, by missing that final crucial shot, it is maxter who takes away one more major item. But he does get punished for it.
Missing that rail really was the skeleton key for a bonus combo there from Effortless, but he's sticking around, trying to make himself known near Mega. Maxter does not have time to push in, and he knows it. But in doing so, what can he recover himself with? Going around the corner, yeah, Maxter around that corner would have been a death sentence for sure. He is in position for heavy at the very least, and the damage over time, giving the damage numbers to Maxter. He knows exactly where Effortless is going to be. But again, the drop-down totem has allowed Effortless to keep the push going. Oh, but they trade! Who's going to spawn where?
Effortless gets the spawn over at Mega. Gets the rocket as well. But that base stack is going to help Maxter just bully his way through and pick up the item regardless. It's interesting because we're kind of getting the opposite of map 1. This time it's Effortless who seems to be doing most of the damage, but Maxter is just cycling through the majors and keeping in control of the map that way.
The denial. As much as Maxter can do to play against the obvious rail factor of this matchup. You saw at the moment Effortless couldn't take a rail and Maxter was keeping it away from him. It looked like a completely unwinnable matchup the second you get that weapon. Everything changes, but caught by surprise, doing as much as he can, but again, can only do so much. You hate taking LG fights when you get knocked up by a rocket. It can be so hard to do damage. At the same time, Maxter, this tri-bolt spam, it's been such a wonderful answer for, you want to try and get this rail angle on me? Eat this damage. Oh, the missed rail! That's going to be a green light for Maxter to maybe push in if he wants to. I think this can be more about the game of denial, continuing to be it, creates the rail angle for himself, re-peek from Effortless.
Yeah.
I think that kind of surprised Maxter a little bit.
He was very much railable, so pretty risky move from Effortless, but I also think that he knows that he kind of has to start making those waves. Perhaps by playing in a less orthodox manner, has to go for these dangerous peaks. Because the railgun has really been his primary weapon so far. 900 damage with the railgun alone, followed by LG with 300. So it's really been all about those long-distance peak shots. It's very clearly the strategy that Effortless has going into this game. And he came close. There's been several instances where he almost got the frag before being able to secure the item, but it's Maxter who still clings on for dear life and somehow turns it around.
Now, in a turn of events, it's the lack of information that Maxter is giving Effortless. As now Heavy is about to spawn, doesn't really worry as much about making noise now because he's in position to take Heavy all the same than Effortless. That was more I hear you, I know you're taking Heavy, I have to bolt. You can even see that's why. Oh no, he's playing the game of teleporters to try and be safer. Unfortunately, still takes that rocket damage when he's trying to avoid as much damage as he can. This is a horrendous position for the American.
LG, perhaps not as good as it could have been there either. Now both players really weak, and that totem, that's going to put a smile on both players' face, I think. But now, can Effortless actually turn this into something? Yes, he got the frag, but he was so weak that Maxter essentially just outstacks him off the spawn since he is playing as a heavy champion. I don't think that Effortless really has an opportunity to make a move.
Oh, I saw that nod from Effortless. He knew he got away with that one.
Oh my goodness, that should have absolutely been a kill for maxter. But he whiffs the shot. He's not going to be too bothered by it though. Because like I just said...
That's always the way though, Flea. It's always the way. You hit all the hard ones and you miss the easy ones. That's just how we roll.
Doesn't really matter much to maxter though, because he managed to get full control back pretty much instantly. Good rocket, make it 2, 3. Can he get it? He should be able to out-heal and get the mega. And now this is actually entirely doable. Effortless, 1 frag behind, 2 minutes to go. This is a much better showing than I think most people would have expected after those first few minutes of Molten.
Keeps his head in the game. It's like I said, I think if this was the Effortless from the original days of Pro League, I feel like it would have been a little bit easier to let things just slip through, but I love this focus and concentration that we're seeing from him. He absolutely can take this. Now maxter is going to take this mega Effortless, losing the totem, he knows exactly where his opponent's going to be. Not that I think he even needed the totem to know that, especially with mega being taken, but this is a scary push now. I fear a little bit sticking around and bringing his health back up with the totem, which is great, but okay, heavy, next play. Oh, misses the shot.
I mean, every single rail that Effortless takes at this stage is setting him back so much, right? If he takes one railgun now, he's essentially railable afterwards, can't make a move on any of the items, and maxter will just run the map and ultimately doesn't even have to hunt his opponent down. So avoiding damage is going to be so key for Effortless, but at the same time he has to make some dangerous plays because he's got a minute left and he's massively outstacked by a very hungry Sorlag. Might be able to get a move on heavy, but no.
He's dead.
Yeah, caught out with the wrong weapon, misses the railgun.
Wrong weapon. I mean, I'm not sure what happened there. Now, there was some kind of mishap and clearly a frustrating exchange, but good for maxter, because the second that rail missed, I mean, he basically didn't take any damage anyway. If the win wasn't guaranteed from it, keeping the stack makes things even better. Effortless does what he can, but it is a tragic end. He was so close. And then here comes maxter around the corner. I honestly, Flea, do not know what happened there.
I think Effortless was just trying to set up, expecting maxter to come through the portal, and he wanted to just get a rail off. But then something changed, and he was like, no, maybe he's gonna come the other way. And so he turns away, looks the other side. All of a sudden, Effortless appears, or rather, maxter appears. Effortless has to turn around with the railgun, misses the opening shot, and you can't do that against a champion that is so fast as Sorlag, because then before you know it, she's right on top of you. You're caught with your rail in the hand, and before you can even switch, get anything else out, it's already over and done.
And in that situation, even if the rail landed, I think he was still dead.
Probably.
It's just the nature of the railgun game, isn't it? Where you can do lots of damage in an instant proximity, but even if you land the shot, you can't fire during the cooldown of the weapon. So you land the shot, Sorlag comes bolting in. Even if you've dealt that damage, he kind of laughs in your face as you die, because you can't answer back. It is a very unfortunate... I actually want to watch that frag back here on the replays. Hopefully we caught it. I know it was right at the end, but it was such a critical moment. Effortless did such an amazing job of bringing things back. This was the beginning of it. Was able to capitalize impressively, to be honest, because it became 3. 3 to 4. And then something happened. It was right here. Boom. Misses the shot. But even if he landed it, he was done.
Still a very solid effort by Effortless, right? As contradictory as that may seem. After a pretty devastating map 1, he kept his head in the game, just like you said, catch up. I think Season 1 Effortless, if that would have happened to him, it would have probably been a tilt, especially after those opening 2 minutes on Molten Falls as well. But this time around, you can tell that even though he is quite lively in his reactions on cam, he is keeping some degree of cool. He is keeping his head in the game, he is remaining focused, and he almost brought it back. Came down to a 1 frag game at one point, but then yeah, that one fumble with the railgun gave maxter all the momentum he needed to close it out definitively.
Hey man, I mean, high-level Quake is a punishing game. It's almost shocking sometimes how you can play this wonderful game of Quake and then one thing goes wrong and it is just catastrophic for the 10 minutes that you've played. Yeah, the demand for playing your absolute A game Quake demands it, absolutely. But you know
Yeah.
what? Our final map here, Vale of Nath. We get to see the Ison versus the Death Knight. This is much more of a playground for Death Knight because, I mean, you know, this is that moment where it's a short map. We're close range. All right, instant Demus. You're dead. See you later. There's more to it than that, obviously, but it's good.
Indeed, yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how maxter approaches this, right? Previous two maps, really, he had a significant mobility advantage that allowed him to steer clear of a lot of what Effortless meant to do and outmaneuver him, but this time that's completely different. Both are just playing standard movement, medium champions. Maxter is running the Ison, so he's got that turret, the deployable damage machine that also, of course, gives a lot of information about where your opponent might be at, but on the other hand, Death Knight has got the burst damage working in his favor, so different from the first two maps, now Maxter has to approach this in a completely different manner. He cannot just fly around the map carelessly knowing that he's outstacking his opponent or he's got items around the map to fall back on that he can get back to before his opponent. Now he really has to be careful because one misstep, one bad Incendimus, like you said, could spell disaster.
Well, both players have rated up for our final map here in Series 2. Maxter is going to have the victory, but will it be another 3-0? We're talking about the ever-growing storylines, the rivalries of all the different players. Maxter's storyline has just been a complete rise to power. And like you said, the last time they played, it was a very, very, very different result. But it was when Maxter was in his kind of infant stages, right? He's come a long way since then, and this series is a complete demonstration of that. Whether it's a 2-1 or 3-0 remains to be seen. We'll see in 10 minutes and come back with an answer, but Maxter is looking like a totally different player. All the way from challenges to his first appearance in the stage, where I say that a lot of players in challenges kind of need to find their feet. Maxter was one of the only examples that never needed to. He kind of looked really good straight away and then just climbed and got better and better to now, I mean, the sky's the limit for Maxter, keeping his head in the game. As our warm-up begins, we'll be finishing this up soon. It's going to be utility and the information of that turret versus the shred of the Death Knight. But if there's shred to be had, this is one of the maps to get it. Final destination with Maxter and Effortless. Let's jump it in. Flea, take us away.
Starting it off once more on Maxter's point of view. Now Maxter has won his previous two matchups 3-0 versus Sib and Cygip, so let's see if he can make that happen once more or if Effortless can make his last stand. This is a pretty good start from the American player. But somehow it falls apart and Effortless is unable to take down the turret fast enough, takes a lot of damage from the ability. And then Maxter realizes that he can capitalize off that, just drops down and uses the LG from a bit further off a distance. So what seemed like a very good start for Effortless ended up going in Maxter's favor anyways.
Well, if things go wrong, at least it happens in 40 seconds and you've got plenty of the map left to go. An opening bit of damage there. Maxter absolutely convinced his opponent was sitting on the high ground, but no such situation. Effortless does a fantastic amount of damage. The defensive plays here, looking to set up a rail. Ooh, had an absolute inkling of an angle, but just couldn't make it land. And Max is able to disengage. Not only that, but also be in position for Mega, I would say, but oh, just comes in swinging. He knows that Effortless is down there.
Once again, Effortless has like a good moment, a burst, where he just does so much damage and gets one up over his opponent, but then in the next fight it just seems to all fall apart. Now, big shout out to Maxter's use of the turret as well though. He has not just been idly letting it rest somewhere, but he's been very strategically dropping it right before these key fights to help him out massively. Like, look, once again, just before he goes through the teleporter, out comes the turret, forces Effortless out of position, and then Maxter follows suit immediately.
Tactical denial of that light, as we have this heavy up next. Effortless doesn't have a lot of resources, and we actually get extra bonus information from Maxter to see that his opponent has nothing. Surely by taking this heavy, this is a green light to push in. Oh, sneaky Effortless. Oh, that does create a rail shot, actually. That was a nice little play there. Effortless, in any other situation, I think that would have been a free push for Maxter. Effortless knows this, and he does his best to hide, and even better, avoiding damage, hits a rail. Unfortunately, doesn't do so much now because Maxter has the items anyway. And the denial just continues, Flea. Effortless has the scraps that are left and nothing else.
And you can tell that maxter is playing this very patiently as well, right? He knows exactly where Effortless is. He's entirely aware that Effortless is just trying to restack down at the railgun side of the map. And the Argentinian player just says, all right, go ahead, take it. I'll just secure Mega Heavy, and when I'm fully stacked, I will come and I will look for you. So Effortless is caught in a bad situation, but he has pushed himself out further into the map, has gotten 100-100 base stack, still doesn't take a fight over at Heavy, listens out to get the exact timing for the next rotation first. And this is also very patient from Effortless. Because I think that maxter was just expecting him to already have set up over at Mega, but instead Effortless just loops all the way around, goes for a rail from the back, and tries to just slowly make an opening happen to take advantage of. But that's got a risk of its own, and I think maxter is going to take advantage of that. It just took too long. The comeback, a little bit too slow.
Oh, the push. I know you have the extra damage and the extra information there, but going up that jump pad, that was a risky play. Maxter almost actually creates a cheeky situation for himself. But yeah, jumping up fresh off the spawn, I really don't know about that one, Flea. Because now Maxter, he got refragged, but guess who's back in position?
It's the same scenario I just described earlier, right? Maxter has got all the major items behind him, Effortless relegated to the railgun side of the map, but that's an important rail. Effortless can go for Heavy now if he's quick. Won't get it, but he might still get the frag.
No! No, two misses! I mean, that second shot that he had there almost felt like a bonus and still unable to land it. That is tragic.
Effortless was just so ready for maxter to try and get out of the room and to head towards Mega once again, but then he just dropped down, completely catching Effortless by surprise, and then, yeah, caught out with the railgun out once more. And now maxter is just running away with the scoreline after Effortless managed to keep it a relatively close game for most of these opening 5 minutes.
Well, at least 2 of these frags have been unnecessary. You can see why they were gone for. It's just that they didn't work. When you think your opponent's weak and you try and refrag fresh off the spawn, the reality is, yes, you can trade it, but as obvious as it sounds, you can push in and just get fragged again, and they've given you a 2-for-1. And in 2 of these cases, Max has got that 2-for-1. Effortless remains extremely weak. The second he heard the jump pad, he kind of knew where Effortless was going to go, having the rail angle already wonderfully set up. Now there is a bunch of damage coming through, but the defensive turret again to block the entryway. His use of this turret has been so combat heavy.
We noticed that a minute or 2 in, but maxter has absolutely just kept up playing the exact same way. Isn't just setting up the turret to get information, always using it for combat, and he's really making the most out of it as well, consistently so. All while keeping control of the major items consistently. Effortless has 3 majors to his name, maxter has 20. That just shows how dominant this player has been on this map.
An aggressive push from Effortless. The reality is he is running out of time. The problem with this is that maxter can keep his control, keep his rail nice and clean, but he can absolutely just dictate the map. In this situation, Effortless, he has to be the playmaker. He's got to do something. If he plays too careful now, he'll risk getting fragged again, but it takes so long that he runs out of time. Problem with this is you become very, very predictable. But you're out of options at that point. You have to go for something. Now that's some good damage. Can he land a bit more? Nice rail. This is the opening here. He needs to get the frag. Unfortunately misses it. Maxter, I don't think, was particularly confident that if he stays there, he's going to be able to get away with it, but he takes the heavy. Can he get a rail here? Escapes again! An aggressive push from Effortless, but he doesn't want to take the teleporter. It's too obvious. He knows there's going to be spam in his future, and somehow Maxter gets away!
I love how maxter just hugged the wall and did not let go. He just had his back against the wall as he's just chimmied along out of the room, not giving a single angle to Effortless. And that really was an opportunity indeed. Maybe the last one that Effortless is going to get on this map. Wasn't able to make anything happen. Might be now, though. If he pushes in aggressively, maxter Defensive rockets are on point. Effortless
No
do want to
way!
push ahead. Somehow, maxter fends him off once more and even is the first one to restack.
And with every time an opponent gets away, that frustration will just build up, where in exchange you think, how are you still alive? I've done damage over and over and over, but maxter picking up every morsel of health that he can get his hands on, and it allows him to stay alive, keep that control. Effortless is nowhere near the heavy, so that's a free pickup. A fantastic rail and a drop down from Effortless, who has to escape. That rail does give some sort of breathing space for Effortless, but I think the aggression will be true. The pre-death scream is all maxter needs to hear to know that his opponent's weak, and a shotgun's all he needs to finish the job. If there was any opportunity, it's gone now. Effortless will lose 3-0. Maxter putting on another wonderful performance, and not dying in that one instance, I think was just, come on now.
This is the third series in a row that maxter gets away with a 3-0 win.
Eesh.
Had a bit of a rough start. Lost to Nosfa and Rafa in his first two matches without getting a single map win, but he has completely turned that around and is now shaping up to be one of the most promising players in the Americas as we are inching closer towards the Stage 3 finals. Well deserved from maxter. Effortless, there were a few opportunities, but I think that if we just recap real quick, map 1, maxter was all over him. The damage was too much to deal with from the very first second, right? Then, of course, we had map 2. That was a much closer affair on Molten Falls. Effortless had an opportunity when it was a one-frag game, but unfortunately, a bit of a fumble gave it away to maxter. And then now the final map, Veil of Nav. It was a pretty close game for a while, but Effortless had to spend too much time on the defensive, and eventually maxter just broke on through and turned the scoreline into what we're seeing right now.
25 seconds is all that remains, but maxter continuing to show us just the level of play that he has reached. He becomes one of the players that everyone is looking at. As we go week after week, closer and closer to the Stage 3 finals, I mean, it's going to be impossible, really, to not talk about how maxter is currently shaping up. And that's what it comes down to. We're going to say this guy has been looking really good in the weeklies. He had a fantastic showing in the last finals that we had. And maxter continues to impress. There really is nothing else to say about it. His damage was fantastic here. The control belonged to him. Effortless had barely any items. He had 2 heavies and 4 megas. Just didn't have a chance to exist.
Versus a total of 32.
Ouch.
On maxter's end, yeah. Even the damage, 1000 damage in maxter's favor. Like you said, it's the positioning, the decisions, the aim, everything just seemed to go in maxter's favor this time around. And Effortless, there were a few opportunities, but ultimately it just wasn't enough to take down maxter in the form that we're seeing him in today.
Now, it is a shame, you know, because I'm always one of the players that is always kind of holding out for Effortless to get a big week, and he has had some performances in the past where he's looked incredible. I think some of his more prominent maps I remember come from Awoken, for instance, because he is a hard worker. There's just a couple of series that happen with opponents where a lot of things just go wrong, and he gets frustrated with it. And, you know, obviously he does the best he can with the situation that's put in front of him. But maxter was always going to be a difficult opponent to conquer for any player in the Americas, clearly. Now, he doesn't get 100% success, but he is one of the more improved players that we have in Pro League. And today is just another demonstration as to why.
Absolutely. Now, Effortless still has some time left to turn things around, right? We saw this in the previous stage, Effortless managing to finish 7th place NA, which is quite the achievement after being a pretty consistent player down in the relegation brackets. I do remember him saying towards the beginning of this season that, you know what, there's going to be another season this time around. I don't just want to hang around in the relegation zone. And he definitely made that happen in the previous stage. So he clearly has the skill he needs. But so far, it just hasn't really worked in his favor. He's only managed to secure 1 map this stage in one of the weeklies against SIP. But there is still time left. Quite a few weeks up. A lot of money up for grabs still.
Now, enough of Series 2, because I want to get into Series 3. This could just as easily have been a featured matchup. It's been a finals before, and we're about to get it as just one of our series, Cooler versus Kilson. It's coming up in about 5 minutes when we return from this break. You don't want to miss it, and spread the word here. Champions go head to head.